Hey, welcome to another episode of GeekOutdoors.com. So this week I'm going to be giving an update on my Panasonic full frame thoughts and how I think there's definitely some fail there. And then secondly, the brand new version of Chrome OS 69 came out and it'll have native support for Linux apps. So let's go ahead and start with the whole Panasonic full frame cameras. Now I did do an initial reaction video. If you didn't see it, I will leave that in the description area below. But overall, there's so much to love about these new full frame cameras. However, there's two things that just make it a fail. One of which I kind of thought that they might do anyway, but the other one I'm completely surprised by why they did that. So let's go ahead and start with the very first thing. It's the fact that Panasonic is still going to be using their contrast-based autofocus system. Now, anybody who uses cameras knows that the Panasonic autofocus system, even with their DFD technology, is definitely not great, especially when you compare it to other camera manufacturers like Canon with their amazing dual autofocus system, and also with Sony with their absolutely crazy fast phase detection system. And so I don't know why Panasonic did this. In general, I'm thinking because they've invested so much of their money and resources into this contrast-based technology that they want to keep using this, and their DFD technology is proprietary, and so that helps with depth to focus. So that's really what it helps with. But even though they've made a lot of software firmware updates to try to improve this with their GH5 series of phones, with their G9, with their Panasonic G7 and G85, it's still not great. And so yeah, I could be wrong on this. They might have developed a new version of DFD, which I think people are calling it DFD2, which might be better, and they're also touting the use of artificial intelligence to help along with that. But until we see it, I'm not going to be impressed by it, because I just do not like the whole contrast-based autofocus system, and I think a lot of people would agree. So that's the first thing. So I kind of expected that there was a really good chance that they still might use this system, and unfortunately they are. Now the second part is the one that I'm really surprised and baffled that they're not using. Now when I did my initial reaction video, they said they're going to use this 3-axis tilt screen, and I wasn't really sure what that meant, okay? But now after looking at it further, it's basically not going to be fully articulating, meaning that the screen's not going to flip around completely, which is the huge advantage that the Panasonic G series of cameras have that Sony doesn't and most other manufacturers do not provide. Although Canon and Olympus and even Fuji, they do provide the fully articulating flip out screen on some of their phones. And so to me, I don't think it's a good move. Okay, now if you are from the camera world, and this is for professional photographers, that's really who they're focusing this on, but there's also a lot of great video capabilities in this one as well. And so I get it to where most photographers, I'm guessing pro photographers, they don't have to have a fully articulating flip out screen because there's a potential that the camera could get damaged because the screen is hanging out. Okay, and so they could also do with the 3-axis tilt screen, they could do more of a portrait style a lot easier. And so the Fuji X-T3, it does use a 3-axis tilt screen. But I'm thinking to myself, why? I mean, there's really no advantage to using this, because if you have a fully articulating screen, you could easily move that in any direction that you want. And at the same time, if you're primarily using this as a video camera, that's amazing. For you to have a flip out screen is such a small thing, but it's huge. It's a small thing to put this on there, but it makes a huge impact on how you can use your camera, especially if you're doing something like this where you're vlogging, and at the same time you want to make sure your composition is correct. And so having this built-in fully flip screen where you can move it around in almost any direction, that really saves you a lot of time, and it keeps you from having to buy a separate monitor, although pros will probably buy a separate monitor anyway. So yeah, those two things are just make it a fail for me. And obviously I am not their target market demographic. This is primarily going to be meant for professionals, but I'm thinking if Panasonic would have really fixed these two things, and the second one I didn't even realize they would need a fix, because I kind of thought they could have a fully articulated screen like they do on every other camera. But if they would have fixed their autofocus and have the fully articulated screen with all the amazing technology and specs that it has, this would have been the ultimate camera. And the fact that it's full frame, it's pretty much going to dominate anybody else, and they have a lot of lenses out there. And so there was the potential for Panasonic to take the crown really quick from Sony and other manufacturers, because they've done so many things right with this camera. And so the camera won't be out until 2019, early 2019. So maybe there's a possibility that they will put a fully rotating screen in there, flip out screen. I hope so. Now, in terms of the autofocus technology, I don't think that's going to change. But if they could possibly just add that, it would make a huge difference. I still wouldn't be able to afford it though, but anyways, it would be an awesome camera. Now, the other piece of news is that the latest release of the Chrome OS 69 actually has native support for Linux apps. Now, this is something Google has been working really hard on. They really started with Android apps as first, and so what they did is they made it to where they run Android apps in a container, so then it has that level of security that Chrome OS is known for. And so with actual native Linux app support, now people could actually run some Linux applications within Chromebooks. And so, for example, if you're like me, you probably want to use Kdenlive and you want to use the native Linux version, I could run in there, or LibreOffice or whatever Linux apps you have. This Christini, that's what they call it, it is Debian based, and so that means it'll be compatible, or should be compatible, with a lot of Linux apps. And so I think this will make a huge difference, because for me, Chromebooks is not for me. Okay, Chrome OS is not. To me, it's a glorified browser, and I really don't feel the advantage that it has for an everyday user. I'd rather just have a full-on operating system where I could do everything. So by doing this, they're making it more of a bridge gap. Okay, so in one case, you can have a fully online controllable operating system, which is very lightweight because it's basically a souped-up browser. But at the same time, since you will be able to run both Android apps and Linux apps on your computer, then it gives it that level of productivity that it didn't have before. And so what I really think Google, and I have mentioned this before, I don't really think they're targeting this at the consumer level. I really think they're targeting this towards schools and also businesses, because if Chromebooks with their Chrome OS works the way Google wants, it's basically going to be an entire Google ecosystem. And so the cost is going to be lower because you don't have to pay a lot of licensing fees for Windows or Apple. You don't have to pay a lot of maintenance costs because a lot of the security, program updates, everything is handled through this browser-based system. And since everything is in a container, there's also an extra level of security. And so those are my thoughts on it. I'm really happy that Google is continually pushing the boundaries of what this operating system can do, especially by including Linux app support. That's just going to be great, because that's going to bring more people into the Linux desktop community in a very indirect way. And I would argue that Windows adding the WSL layer did something very similar as well. So Linux is actually benefiting from this, the Linux desktop operating system, by these other operating systems, making it more interoperable, more compatible with it. So that's really cool. So those are my thoughts. If you had any ideas, any thoughts about the Panasonic full-frame cameras or this brand new version of Chrome OS with native Linux app support, be sure to leave that in the comments area below. And as always, if you did get value out of these videos, share, like, and subscribe. Hey geeks, if you are a creative geek like me and you wanted to learn how to create content on YouTube and other places on the internet, then check out my Gold Content Creators Group, where you'll get access to 30 videos plus additional content for all the creative geeks out there. And the best part of it is, all of this is free. Simply head over to the link below, check out my page, and sign up for my Gold Content Creators Group. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the other side. Thanks for checking out this episode. And as always, if you like these videos, be sure to click on the subscribe button. And for full written content, audio content, and additional geek stuff, head over to geekoutdoors.com, and I'll see you outdoors on the very next episode.